Sensation and perception. 2. The soul gathers fragments of awareness, not because it is not whole in itself, but because the time has come to remember. The alteration of your perception of yourself and the environment you are in is done by altering, distorting, twisting, and jamming the field you emit. That is why forgetting occurs, because every time you come here, what you emit, or emitted another time and became a memory at the energy field level, and which simply exists in the continuum, is seen from behind, that is, as something that leaves and you feel like following it, and not as something that comes to you, and you have to wait for it. If you had the patience and will to wait for the result that you yourself emitted, then things would return to normal. But because the natural course of energy has been twisted, the implemented tendency is to run after results, and after anything else, without access to personal and planetary ancestral memory. You feel like you are missing something that you are driven to search for, and what results is the endless repetition of the same experiences, generally dramas and suffering, pain and desires, ascents and falls, with various variations and nuances, because these give the feeling of fragmentation, because they are created from the perspective of fragmentation, a feeling that leads, consequently, to the perception of lack. Normally, what is created is perceived instantly, and so it is in reality. But this delay in perceiving the consequences and concrete result of what you have designed created is due to the process of densification of consciousness, which is actually a trick. If the manifested field is twisted and what you have designed no longer gives you the feeling, you no longer have the conviction that you yourself are the author, then what is perceived becomes a question mark and a doubt, and not absolute certainty. It is as if you were saying to yourself, did I create this? Let me try again. Between emission and perception, there is a point where the energy, the field, the wave emitted by yourself becomes fragmented. The wave becomes a particles, and is perceived as such and not as a coherent and living whole. This fragmentation of consciousness of the unified field into disparate, separate, and seemingly unconnected memories, individuals, and presences is what we call time. That is, the slowing down of the manifestation process. Consciousness is fragmented by what can be called the Hall of Mirrors, a process in which the wave is subjected to self-reflection, or by itself, the place where the ego and self-importance arise. The wave becomes a particle, a false, fictitious entity that begins to create scenarios about itself, thus deepening the fragmentation even further. And this is because it no longer recognizes itself as a wave, even though it has never been anything else. When you look from behind the mirror, you see an amnesiac presence, animated by fears, disturbed by its own mental processes that it considers thinking, which cause it emotions and feelings, more or less chaotic but repetitive. When you look in the mirror, finding yourself in the box, you see yourself in your daily life as someone separate from others. Although your life seems different from others, in essence the experiences are similar to a certain degree, even though the situations seem different in terms of time and space. The impression that you are not the one who creates, or that you are not part of a continuous creative process, and that something outside of you creates your destiny in time and space, actually deprives you of access to the continuity of which you are a part, sabotaging your own creative energy, which, in reality, is who you are. The very fact that you are sitting here reading this is proof of the process described above, because you already knew these things. The idea is that when you see yourself from the outside, both yourself and the situation you are in, but without losing track of the events of everyday life, you recover the energy you have lost or the energy drain that occurs when your attention is fragmented. That is focused exclusively on the normal world. Half of our energy is lost because we only perceive the linear event and not the one in which time and space are compressed into energy, as they actually are. The mirrors in the text above are transparent when you look at them. And in order to see them, you have to focus your attention or use your peripheral vision, let's say, from the future to the past, in order to see the present, because we actually perceive the past with our senses, that is, what has already been produced, otherwise we would have nothing to perceive. We perceive what has already been created, the known. It is intention that creates what we perceive, and it is also intention that orders infinite energy into conceptual forms or shapes that we all agree on. In reality, we live in a void, in a living energy continuum, which we ourselves organize by agreeing.
This ball of energy is a cat, okay?
Ah, wow, okay.
Now go and tell others so we can all understand what we're talking about, okay?
Yes, cool.
Make sure it doesn't scratch you.